Hello, my name is Samantha, my pronouns are she, her, and welcome to my reading vlog. 3 out of the 4 books for this vlog are ones I already owned. The 4th one is a library book, but it's not my fault. It's not my fault because I put it on hold like 2 days ago and then it was ready the next day. So like the book wanted to be here. Who am I to say no? So it's part of the vlog. So I'm going to show you that one when I get it, but I'll show you the first 3 that I have now, not in any particular order. First one, An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. And because pretty much every time, if not every time, I do a reading vlog, when I talk about the summary of what the books are about before I begin, I always get something wrong. So I'm just going to read the summaries to you. So story time starts now. Okay. An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. This was published somewhat recently. 2018. Okay. It's winter in the Catskills, and Mitchell's Inn is the perfect setting for a relaxing, maybe even romantic weekend away. It boasts spacious old rooms with huge wood-burning fireplaces and a well-stocked wine cellar. It is ideal for just curling up with a good murder mystery. Good way to start. Okay. So when a blizzard cuts off the electricity and all contact with the outside world, the guests settle in and try to make the best of it. Soon, though, one of the guests turns up dead. It looks like an accident. But when a second guest dies, the others start to panic. Within the snowed-in paradise, something or someone is picking off the guests one by one, and there's nothing they can do but hunker down and hope they can survive the storm and one another. I'm excited to read this. It seems, so my favorite mystery is my favorite genre. These are all like mystery or thriller. I'm thinking this one leans more toward thriller, but it does have that kind of classic, like, and then there were none trope. My favorite thing almost in the world is a manor house murder mystery. And this seems like maybe a modern version of that. And I'm not, there's reason to believe that I'll like this. I'll say that for all these. Okay, so Shari Lapena, An Unwanted Guest. Next, we have None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. Quite popular last year, came out last year. So, the summary for this one. Celebrating her 44th birthday at the hot new local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summer crosses paths with an unassuming woman called Josie Fair. Josie, as it turns out, is also celebrating her 45th birthday. They are, in fact, birthday twins. A few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other again, this time outside Alex's children's school. Josie has been listening to Alex's podcasts and thinks she might be an interesting subject for her series. She tells Alex, on the cusp of great changes in her life. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and although Alex finds her unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep going on the project. Slowly, she starts to realize that Josie is hiding some very dark secrets. And before she knows it, Josie has inveigled her way into Alex's life and into her home. But as quickly as she had arrived, Josie Fair disappears. Only then does Alex discover that Josie has left a terrible and terrifying legacy in her wake, and that Alex has become the subject of her own true crime podcast, with her life and her family's lives in grave danger. So I'm wondering, this seems like the kind of book that could go in a couple different ways. And I'm also curious, given that there was kind of a lot of information in that summary, does that cover the first 20%, like that's what happens, and then we're figuring out the rest? Or did they put in maybe more than they should have in the summary? I'll be interested to find, I'll be interested in the answer to that question. Okay. And then next we have The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. And the summary for this one is as follows. On a day that begins like any other, Harriet Westaway receives a mysterious letter bequeathing her a substantial inheritance from her grandmother. Hale knows there's been a mistake. Her grandparents have been dead for more than 20 years, and she hasn't had anyone to help her since her mother died 3 years ago. But the bills are piling up, and Hale is running out of options. Down on her luck and worn thin by the weight of adulthood, Hale can't help but wonder if the cold reading skills she's honed as a tarot card reader might help her claim the money. Soon Hale finds herself at Trepasson, the sprawling estate in the English countryside where the deceased Mrs. Westaway's family has gathered to pay their respects and claim their bequest. But it doesn't take long for Hale to realize that there's something very, very wrong about this strange situation, and the inheritance is at the center of it. So this one I have like just started. I'm like on chapter 4, which is page 21. Yes. So I'm still at the very beginning. It seems like this one is going to be more mystery than thriller, but I guess that depends on how strange the inheritance strangeness is. Like, it may become a thriller, but my guess is that it's going to be more toward mystery, so we'll see. And then the book that I'll be picking up tomorrow is called Who to Believe by Edwin Hill. Okay, yes, I double checked. Who to Believe by Edwin Hill is correct. So this one, I will read you the summary when I get it, but I found out about this one, which I also think is a relatively new release. So there's a bookshop called Murder by the Book, which I believe is based in the Houston area. And they had an author talk with the author of this book that I just happened to randomly watch, and it sounded intriguing, so I put it on hold at the library, and hey, it's ready. So it is part of the vlog. Yes, so I'm going to be continuing with The Death of Mrs. Westaway, and we will just kind of go from there. All right, it is now a few days later. I'm about a third of the way into The Death of Mrs. Westaway, so we're going to talk about this one. But first, I did pick up Who to Believe by Edwin Hill, so I'm going to give you the summary for this one. Okay. Monreath, Massachusetts was once a small community of whalers and farmers. These days, it's a well-to-do town filled with commuters drawn to its rugged coastline and country roads. A peaceful, predictable place until popular restaurateur Laurel Thibodeau is found brutally murdered in her own home. Suspicion naturally falls on Laurel's husband, Simon, who had gambling debts that only her life insurance policy could fix, but there are other rumors too. Among the group of 6 friends gathered for Alice Stone's 40th birthday, theories abound concerning Laurel's death. Max Barbosa, police chief, has heard plenty of them, as has his longtime friend, Unitarian minister Georgia Fitzhugh. Local psychiatrist Fairleigh Drake is privy to even more, gleaning snippets of gossip and information from his patients while closely guarding his own past. But maybe everyone in Monteith has something to hide, because before this late summer evening has come to a close, one of these 6 will be dead. And as jealousy, revenge, adultery, and greed converge, the question becomes not who among these friends might be capable of such a thing, but who isn't. So my understanding of this one is that most of the book takes place the evening of that birthday party with those 6 friends, of them kind of, it sounds like going over theories, and that I don't know if one of them is supposed to be the one who did it, but one of them ends up dead, and I'm like, is it directly connected? I don't know. So we're going to find out. But the one I have started reading, The Death of Mrs. Westaway. So there are kind of 2 parts I want to talk about this. So the first one, I want to talk about certain things I didn't really like about the beginning of this book, so the setup. So I am going to be talking like sort of in specifics. So again, it is just going to be stuff like the beginning of the book, but if you don't want to know anything specifically about it, You can skip ahead to this timestamp. And as a reminder, this is the one that's about so a main character, Harriet, who goes by Hale. She is a young woman who gets a letter saying that she has inherited a certain amount of money from Mrs. Westaway, who is supposedly her grandmother. But as far as Hale knows, her grandmother passed away before she was born. So then the questions then that the reader is left with: one, why does she think that she can, pull off what she thinks is conning these people? And two, like, even if she thought she could do it, why would she do it? And the author answers those questions, but I just didn't, it just seemed, it was so obvious that, this is part of the plot because I want you to know this. And it seemed a little maybe uncreative. I don't know. Because, so the first question, why does she think she can do this, is basically explained because Hale is a tarot card reader. And at first I was like, does the author not really understand what tarot cards are for? But it's kind of then goes on to explain that the author does know what they are and that they're not really a fortune-telling tool. But basically it's explained that Hale thinks she can do this, and it's said over and over again that if anyone can do this, she can, because she's basically good at cold reading people. She notices small details about them that suggests things that Hale kind of picks up on, and then will kind of work that into her readings. So she thinks that she can use that skill to basically con this family out of who knows how much money. But then it's like, well, so she thinks she can get away with it, but why does she choose to do that? Most people probably wouldn't. Why does she choose to? Well, one, she's living in complete poverty. But then also this loan shark mafia-esque guy shows up, and it's stated that some time ago Hale took out a loan for $500, and through ridiculous interest rates has already paid back pounds, but $2,000. And the guy shows up wanting 3,000 more. So that she's he's you have a week to, come up with the money, or he threatens physical violence. So that is then, oh, well, that's why she has to do it. It's just a little too clear that that's in there to explain why she does this. But then, the author doesn't want you to think that our main character is unlikable. So then the author also includes a scene where it's the last tarot reading that she does before she decides to leave is for a woman who she afterwards, she decides to give the money back to the woman. And then when she's not able to catch her as she's leaving, Hale donates the money. So it's oh, but she's still a good person. It's just too on the nose. They were just, the whole beginning of the book, I was I get what you're saying, and I'm glad that you addressed those things, but it was just so clearly this is here for this purpose. I don't know. But, okay. So I'm up to the part now where she has arrived at the Westaway family home. She's met the other family members, and they're there for the reading of the will, and that has happened. But I won't go into specifics about that, but that's sort of we all knew it was coming to that. That's in the the summary. She's going to the house for that purpose. So she's there. And I wanted to check in at this point before I kind of, start figuring things out. It's kind of okay, now we're here. Where do I think we're going to go from here? But what's curious to me in how the author has chose to structure this book is that, so not after every chapter, but every few chapters will end with what appears to be a journal entry that they're dated from a few months before Hale was born. So it seems like they're written by her mother. And it seems like, because we are seeing those letters, it seems like, again, I'll say seems like, we know what her connection to this family is. So I'm wondering what, like, and I also recognize that, like, there is definitely room in those little bits of those, like, journal entries or letters that we're getting. Like, there's room in there for there to be some kind of twist, definitely. But what's curious to me about all of that is that you've basically answered your own mystery. Like, or it's suggesting that you have. And like I said, there's room for twists in here. But it's just an odd place to be like, we're a third of the way into the book. You've kind of already suggested what is going on. And so either like, does someone try and kill her? Does this like become a thriller? Like, it gets dangerous and she's stuck at this house and like, who knows what'll happen? Or like, how does she discover the truth? How does she reveal the truth to someone else? Like, it's an odd place to be a third of the way into the book. But that's where we are. Okay, so it's the next day. I'm now halfway through The Death of Mrs. Westaway. And we're kind of still having the same issue because I still feel like there's a pretty obvious solution. And there is still room for twists to be added in. But if this is a suspense novel, I am not sure what I am supposed to be in suspense about. That's where we are halfway through. So I'm now at the almost inevitable part where, because she's a tarot card reader, she's of course doing a reading for one of the family members. And I know it's such a bad idea. Like there's no possible way that this turns into something good for her. I mean, it's so dumb, and you think she'd know that. Okay, so here's what I don't get. So she's done the tarot card reading. It has clearly and obviously gone wrong. There's a very obvious tension in the room. Someone has just got up and walked out. And she's like, "What did I say?" And for a person who's supposedly so good at cold reading people, you can't pick up on the vibes in this room? There are now about 135 pages left, and there's been a reveal of something I think is the truth. But if it is the truth, I'm not sure what else happens in these 135 pages. I'm also not really sure where this book necessarily intends to end up. Like, because, like, okay, so she has this information, but, like, she could very easily do nothing with it. And if she did do something with this information, like, it doesn't help her, it doesn't help anyone else. I guess I just don't really get this book. I don't really get what it wants to be, what it's trying to be. I don't really get it. So I was just reading at the library, and I took a lot of notes while I was reading. But what's interesting is that, so Ruth Ware, in writing this book, like, she keeps setting up, like, situations that she keeps creating these tense situations and then diffusing them. So you think, like, oh, like, we're really no. Like, oh, we really might get it. No. But, like, there's 70 pages left. It has to happen now, right? And, like, so I stopped at a part where I was like, okay, I feel like, right? There's 70 pages left. There's gotta be something in this book. So I'm gonna go home, probably start some dinner, probably finish the book, and I guess I'll tell you what it's about when I'm done with it. I don't know. I might check in before I'm done, but yeah, this is a weird reading experience. It's a weird reading experience. Back at home, I've had dinner, reading more of the book, but we're now at 50 pages left and still waiting. So last night I finished The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. I'm gonna give it 2 stars. I didn't really like it, but I didn't hate it, so 2 stars. It kind of, the last 30 to 40 pages is when like things picked up. Um, yeah, I mean, if you haven't read Ruth Ware before, which I had not either, I wouldn't start with this one. Maybe here others you would like more. I mean, I don't know if I'll read her again. It's possible, definitely. I'm not ruling it out, but it just, it, uh, there was one part that was genuinely clever, and there was one separate part that I actually gasped. But other than that, it yeah, it was okay. It was 2 stars. So, moving on. Let's move on. I started last night Who to Believe by Edwin Hill. This is the library book. I decided to go with this one since it's the library book and I own the other two. So I'm going to go with this one. I'm only a few pages in though, so I don't really have anything to say so far, but this one is up next. And as a reminder, this is the one where, so it starts where a woman, it's a small town in Massachusetts. A woman dies, and then there are 6 people in town who are like gathered together for a, I want to say, birthday party, and are kind of chatting about things. And I mean, we'll see where it goes. Just got out of the shower, and I want to focus tonight on reading more of Who to Believe because I'm now a third of the way in, and so it's better than I thought it would be, which is not to say that I thought I wouldn't like it, because I wouldn't have started it if I thought I wouldn't like it, but the reflection by the door is not okay, there we go. Okay, but it's better than it's even better than I thought it would be because of how it's structured, I guess. It's very interesting, so I'll explain. So, the way that the book is described in the summary, which is that there's been a murder in a small town, and these 6 friends have gathered together for a birthday party. They're discussing the murder. At some point, one of them dies, and it's like, well, so did one of them kill the woman? Like, who killed the person who dies at the party? And while that's not wrong, I don't think it's the most accurate way of describing how this book is set up. So I've read the first 2 sections so far, and each section is from a different character's perspective. And so when the book starts, it's a few days after the woman has been killed. And so section 1 it's the day of the birthday party. And so you get like from that afternoon up through like about an hour after the party. And so the person who like dies that night doesn't actually die during the party. And this summary doesn't specifically say it was during the party, but it says that night. So I assumed, and that's actually not the case. So section 1 is from the afternoon of the party through the party itself through to like an hour after. And then section 2 is a different character, and the day basically resets because you start back at that afternoon, you go through the events leading up to the party, you go through the party, and then like an hour after the party. And so I'm thinking then it goes like 6 sections of getting that day from the 6 different perspectives. And I'm like, so how is this? It's not, what's really, really interesting is not just that you keep getting like basically you're getting the day over, because you're kind of not, because each person, I think my theory on how it's set up, it's like the Who to Believe of like eyewitness accounts in like a crime. Even though you have 6 people, let's say, witness the same event or attend the same party, they're each going to describe that event differently. And that is the case so far with the first 2 sections, including to the point where, so there's a conversation between, so section 1 is Farley, who is the psychologist, and then section 2 is Alice, who's the person who's having the birthday party. And in section 1, from Farley's perspective, there's a conversation between Farley and Alice. And so that conversation also happens in section 2 from Alice's perspective. but it's actually like the conversation continues on a little farther in that section. And it's like they had the same conversation like in reality, but when you have the day from Farley's perspective, I'm thinking, and then like the day from Alice's perspective, they're each going to pick out what's most important to them. And it's not written like these are like testimonies or like eyewitness statements. They're not. They're definitely not. But it's sort of like, this is what Farley says about this day. This is what Alice says about this day. And then section 3, which I'm going to start now, is going to be Max, who is the chief of police. You're going to get his perspective on the day. And noticing the small, like, inconsistencies, the small differences, is what is, I think, most interesting about reading this book. So I would suggest, if this sounds intriguing to you, if you want to read it, to kind of, to not like draw it out, because if you read it over like a longer period of time, you may miss those certain like differences between tellings of the event because you just don't remember it because you read it, like a week ago or something. So if you can, try and read it in a more condensed period of time rather than drawing it out. Really quick clip just to say that, so I've started section 3 from the police chief's perspective, and this one actually starts like where the other 2 sections ended. So it's like just after the party now. So they're not actually all 6 the full day. Section 3 is started with like an hour after the party. So I'm interested to see where the other sections, what times they cover. I've now finished sections 3, 4, and 5 in Who to Believe, and I'm into section 6, and I've got about 30 or 40 pages left, and I don't know how this is going to end, but I continue to be endlessly fascinated with the way that this book is structured and plotted. So, as I had mentioned, section 3 goes from like an hour after the party up through like early morning the next day, and then section 4 starts back again with the afternoon, the day of the party, and goes through like late morning the next day. And then section 5, where does section 5 start? Oh yes, section 5 starts like the evening of the day before the party, and then goes up through like the afternoon of the day after. So like so the first 2 are the same, but then each section after that is a little bit different with time. Section 6, though, gives us different pieces from like the past year leading up to this, like not covering that whole time, but just little pieces of time. It jumps around a little bit, and I want to just listen to this author talk about how he plotted everything, how he kept track of what happened at what time with who and who knew about it, and like. I've been taking notes while reading this, and I don't know. I don't know who killed the lady. I don't know who killed the person who died like the night of the party. Is anyone else gonna die in the last few pages? I don't know. I don't know. But I really hope, like, because I've enjoyed this so much, like, I'll tell you right now, it's tracking for a 4-star. And I don't want you to be disappointed, and I don't think that I will be. I want it to be a 4-star. So fingers crossed, I'm going to finish it today, and we'll find out. Just finished it. Still have to think about it. I think I'm going to go 3 stars. I obviously was very excited about the structure of the book, the plotting of the book, as I had just talked about. But the ending, just like the motive or motives for the murders just were not as creative as the rest of the book. It just, it's a bummer. Kind of disappointing, but I did obviously like it overall. Like the end, it didn't ruin it, but it's not 4 stars anymore. But it's a 3. I did like it. I felt the why of it was, yeah. For how good every other part of this was. For that part to be just not there, I mean, that's a big part of, you know, a book like this. And it wasn't quite, it didn't quite do it for me. So 3 stars, not bad. Did like it, but it just wasn't, it didn't have, overall 3 stars. So next I'm gonna go with An Unwanted Guest, The Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. I'm gonna start that one next. I'm now a third of the way into An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena, and I'm undecided about it so far, but here's what this one is about as a reminder. So this is the one where you have this, it's like a good handful of people, like more than a few, less than a dozen. And they're staying at this like secluded kind of like old-fashioned like inn or hotel in, I think it's New York State, but there's this huge snowstorm, so they're all basically stuck there. And during like normal weather, this hotel does not have like cell reception or Wi-Fi, but the storm has also knocked out the phone lines. So they are isolated, they're secluded. And basically guests start dying. And so I'm at the part now where like the first guest has died, and at first glance it seems like an accident, but a few of the guests thinks it looks a little more suspicious than that someone may have murdered her. So I'm interested to see how it escalates from this point, and I think that'll kind of determine how I feel about it, because like I'm definitely interested, but I'm not like completely like in love with it yet or anything. But it does have like all this setup of why I love Golden Age mysteries so much, because what I like about those is that you don't have the science or the forensics to rely on to figure it out for you. Like you just have to put the pieces together yourself and figure it out. And basically that's what these people are going to have to do, because like there's no detective character, there's no doctor character. At least no one has admitted to being any of those things. So they're just going to have to figure it out as the stakes presumably keep rising. So it's good. Like I'm getting through it pretty quickly, but I'm still undecided at this point. So that's where we're at so far. I just finished An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. I think I'm gonna give it 2 stars. It didn't. It just. I mean, I didn't like the ending. Like up until it was revealed, I didn't know who it was, so I can give it that. But it wasn't bad. I didn't necessarily like it, but I don't think it's a 1-star book. So I think I'm going to go 2. It was not satisfying. And I'll try and figure out how to say why. So like I said, it had this setup of the kind of book that I like, but it didn't have the feel of the kind of book that I like. I also wasn't particularly satisfied with the motive, I guess. It felt kind of, and then even the how they figure out who did it just seemed too simple to me. It was just like, and then once it was figured out, it was like, oh, well, this clears up everything. Like, even though it didn't technically, but that was not satisfying. And then you kind of get like a full confession, sort of, where it's just like, once the game is up, it's up completely. And it was okay. It wasn't bad. It was 2 stars. So we got one more book for this reading vlog, It's going to be None of This Is True by, I had to check, Lisa Jewell. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And I mean, fingers crossed, because I've not had the best luck. So, I do currently have a bit of a cold, got a little sore throat, but I'm now about 20% into None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And I'm liking it so far. Currently on track for 3 stars, but it kind of, we'll see how it goes. As a reminder, this is the one about the 2 women who discover that they have the same birthday, like including born in the same year and apparently at the same hospital. So, and one of them has a podcast, so the other one is like, hey, there's a story here. Let's maybe work together. And we know from the beginning that within like 2 weeks or a few weeks, short amount of time, things have gone downhill. There ends up being 2 people who are dead. I don't know which 2 people, but it escalates quickly is the point. So going into this, I thought that where the thread is coming from would be a little more obvious. And there are clear red flags, but it's not quite as like clear cut or obvious as I thought it might have been. So that's good. But yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes and how it's handled. And I think that might be, for me, what determines how I feel about the book. So it is much later, much later, and I am still just 2/3 of the way into None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And long story short, so you have these 2 women speaking to each other for a podcast, Josie and Alex. And Josie is telling Alex a story about how her husband is abusive to her and their daughters. That's the short version. And basically, I don't believe her story. And like the title is None of This Is True. But if the twist in this thriller is not, but the story is actually false, I don't know what the point of this book is, unfortunately. I have now finally finished None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This was not good. It was not good. This has been kind of a bust. I was between, do I give it 1 star? Do I give it 2 stars? I didn't like it, so it's getting 1 star. I don't know what the point of this book was. I don't. At this point, it's May. I started this vlog in February. I'm wrapping it up now. The whole point, so I don't even remember what I talked about earlier in this vlog, but my one and only reading goal for this year is not the number of books. It's having an average rating of at least 3.0. Like, I know that seems like a low bar, but that's what we're aiming for, okay? And we're not getting there with books like this. And I am hoping that by the end of the year, I get a little bit better at picking books that I like. I learn more about the books that I like so I can pick books to read that I like, and that I don't have to be DNFing like literally 3 times more books than I'm finishing in the year. But, you know, it's practice. You learn as you go. I would not recommend this one. I know that. So hopefully the rest of the year goes better. We'll see.